Welcome to another Infographic Instant with Brian Michael. In this episode, we're going to be looking at whether Hong Kong's financial regulators are under-integrated. This infographic comes from a larger paper where we look at the costs and benefits of integrating Hong Kong's financial regulators. And we find, based on those costs and benefits, that Hong Kong lawmakers should consider the adoption of a Twin Peaks regulatory model. Looking at the infographic, we see that it is divided into the two major quote-unquote branches of financial regulatory policy. On the upper part of the infographic, we show macroprudential policy and the extent of the integration of regulators that make such macroprudential policy. And on the lower part of the infographic, we show integration of financial regulators that deal in conduct, namely the policing of banking, securities, insurance, and other subsectors of the financial sector. So, what do these infographics mean? Well, the bars show the difference in the extent of integration from similar countries. So imagine most of you have seen a typical regression where you see a bunch of dots on a 2x2 graph, a line drawn through those dots, and maybe some distance between the line. That it's called the line of best fit, and that describes the average country, or what a country should be predicted to have in terms of its characteristics. We're citing two authors that you will see in the infographic, and they do the same kind of regression, but rather than on a 2x2 plane, they attempt to correlate various national characteristics with the extent of integration of these countries' financial regulators. So this multivariate correlation describes what we would expect to see a country's financial regulator integration compared with a broad range of variables, and you can see those variables in the source paper. So having explained a little bit about the methodology, let's look at the infographic. The top part of the infographic shows the extent of regulatory over or under integration, given this type of multivariate regression. And what we see is that countries like the UK, Korea, Japan, and that group of countries are slightly over-integrated given their national characteristics, whereas in the group of countries consisting of Hong Kong, Turkey, Mexico, are under-integrated. To be sure, Hong Kong is one of the least under-integrated out of the group of countries you see in front of you, with the most under-integrated countries being Mexico, Canada, and so forth. Nevertheless, the data do suggest that Hong Kong is under-integrated and point our attention to this area as something for possible lawmaker intervention. Looking at the bottom part of the infographic, we see the extent of under-integration in financial conduct. This is the policing of financial markets. And again, we see two groups of countries, Singapore, Korea, Germany, being overregulated from a business conduct point of view, particularly when considering the national characteristics of those countries. And the other group of countries show under-integration, Switzerland, the US, again we see Hong Kong. To be sure, for both parts of the infographic, Hong Kong is not the most under-integrated, and therefore the most needing of financial regulatory reform, particularly organizational reform. Nevertheless, these data do turn our attention to an area of the organization of financial regulation which merits attention. So we're not saying in this infographic that Hong Kong should integrate because similar countries do. Instead, what we are saying is that Hong Kong should consider these data along with other data as signs for a much needed organizational change in the way that it regulates its financial markets. This has been another Infographic Instant with Brian Michael.